What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. Are there things that you want that you just can't get done, that you don't make happen? How bad do you actually want them? Have you ever asked yourself that? Well, today we're going to be looking at exactly that. How bad do you want it? And do you want it enough? That's the topic for this episode. I'm Danny and my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Yeah, why do you think this is important? Is your
Well,
topic?
I was watching a motivational video of the same title, by the way. How bad do
Ooh.
you want it? It was actually I think the first motivational video I ever saw, like, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago back on YouTube.
Oh, 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 I see what
I
you're
had
saying.
never seen a motivational video before that. And I saw
Oh,
this and it just really resonated with me. And in it, he says, you know, you don't have, when you want success as much as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful.
yeah, that seems
And
reasonable.
yeah, and it kind of made sense because a lot of us want things, but we just kind of want it.
Yeah.
We think we want it, but we're not willing to put in the work to actually get it. And I think that really differentiates the people who get what they want from the people who don't get what they want.
Well, I think that's too where, you see all this like we see this like tendency to victimize or to blame. And it's because you're not getting what you want, but because you don't really want it or you don't want it enough to actually bother because it's hard. And it's like, and all those other, I mean, we've talked about so many things that are related to this, like the fear, the imagination, all the things that we do to ourselves that like get in our way, that block us, that limit us. And all of that is like really you get getting down to that big question of do you really want it? And what do you want? Because I think for a lot of people too, like I think they have so many wants that like it seems just impossible because they haven't like narrowed down what they want to.
Yeah. There was another audiobook I was listening to called Get Out of Your Own Way. And this
Oh,
guy is like really direct in what he says. And it's great because he was talking about in his seminars how he stands up in front of everybody and he's like, okay, raise your hand if you have everything that you want in life. And like clearly nobody raises their hand. And he's like,
yeah.
you're all liars. You have exactly what you want in life because if you actually wanted anything differently, you would go out and get it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's the truth, right? It's like, it's funny too. Like I think about that all the time. It's like, you know, even when I was like really depressed, like in the back of my mind, I knew I didn't want to be that way. And I kept trying to not be that way. And it was hard, but I got there. It's like if you do want it, it will happen because you won't
Mm-hmm.
stop trying. Like you'll keep stumbling and falling and muddling through until it eventually works. And I think that's the thing. Like people don't realize, like they look at these successes and they're like, oh, it's not fair. It was so easy for them. It's like, yeah, maybe they had different things to start with, or maybe they were lucky or whatever. They were still doing stuff. If you're not doing anything, you can't expect the consequences to happen. It just doesn't work out that way. There's like a disconnect between responsibility and what our lives are.
Yeah, what you said there is really important. Doing it until, because when you want it, you do it until. Most
Yeah.
people, they just do it until it's uncomfortable or until they
Mm.
encounter failure the first time or the second time or the third time. You know, so like doing it until, I noticed in my life the areas where I really made a big difference were areas where I was like, I don't care. Like I'm gonna do it until. It's like
Yeah.
you and me, like I'm gonna keep on doing it until. So I'm not giving up. You're giving up first. So let's just go. However long it takes. If I get it, great. If I don't, whatever. But I'm doing it until.
But at least you did it, right? I mean, how else would you do it? I mean, it's funny
Mhm.
because when you mentioned this topic of like, um, how bad do you want it? The first thing I actually thought of was like, Nietzsche was really thought that, like one of the most important things for meaning in our life is achievements, is achieving things, but achieving things that are meaningful to us, that we create the meaning by doing that, right? So these life goals, life projects, and that all of that success is tied to your strength of will. So your ability to be honest with yourself, to have to will the resistance to overcome the obstacles you're going to face. And I always like that way of thinking of willpower as it's not just strength, but it's the strength to overcome the obstacles in your way, the resistance that
Mhm.
you're going to meet whenever you will something whenever you want something. Because any goal you want, you're going to run into a million obstacles. I mean, that's the whole point of having goals is also willing the obstacles that are going to come with them, right? Like if I want to be a programmer, I need to learn it. Like, you need to learn the skills and you need to do it a lot in order to get good at it and efficient at it, right? If you want to like get your degree, you got to go to school. Like, I mean, it's just these things that you have to do in order to make those ends achievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point that you have to notice what you want and also the obstacles that come along with it. Because that can give you the perspective to actually say, you know what? Maybe I don't want this.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important skill to have.
Yeah. That's the other side of it, right? Too, because I think that's the other thing people always forget is like they imagine they want these things, but they don't really want to put in the time, or they want to hang out with their friends every night, or they want to binge watch TV every night, or and it's like, well, that's fine. If that's what you want to do, do that. Because these two are inconsistent. If something's going to take up all your time and going to limit your social interactions and going to do all this stuff, or at least until you get to a certain point, you got to be willing to sacrifice that. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, it's the willingness to make sacrifices in what we take to be our quality of life in order to get that higher quality of life. It's like a trade-off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was this guy Lester Levinson who created the Sedona method, and he used to say, "Whatever you want, either get it or let it go, either have it or let it go."
Yeah.
And when I first heard it, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, "But how can you do that? Because everything I want is like out there, and it's not here, and I can't let it go because I want it." But then after a while, I kind of saw the reasoning in there that it's like, yeah, if you want something, either have it or let it go. Like because anything else is just torture. Yeah.
You're just making yourself miserable. It's just it's that depression, right? It's just making yourself miserable for no reason. And it's like, it's crazy how we torture ourselves. I mean, most of us, it's like this like self-masochism all the time. It's insane and like miserable. And I think that's where you see like, that's why I think positivity is so important. Like you have to have the right attitude to get what you want. And like you said, I think the guy was saying like, you have to want it as bad as breathing. Like it has to be that important to you if you're actually going to achieve it. Otherwise, it's just going to be something that falls to the side because it's not something you value.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is just about getting our values straight? What we want? Is that what it is?
I think that's definitely part of it. I think there's also a lot of like mental training that goes on too, because a lot of people want things because they want this feeling that they think they'll have when they get that thing.
Yeah.
But then they also don't want to have that because they're afraid of what it might mean, or they're afraid they might lose what they have now. And then there's the whole other thing. Like I've been looking for a while that when I really want something, when I really desire it, it's actually like already done.
Yeah.
Like that's how I'm starting to see it. It's like you have a mango seed and that creates a mango tree. It's like the thing that I want is the mango tree, but right now I have the seed. And it's like the tree's already in here. It's not coming from somewhere else. It's already in here. So like I already have the thing that's going to create that I want. So now all I have to do is water it and care for it and just let it grow.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, it's like self-realization, right? It's like if you know yourself, you know what you possess, you just have to realize it in the world. You just have to manifest it. I like that. That's a good one. Yeah, it's like
because it can't exist somewhere outside of me. Like that's the crazy thing. If I'm ever anything that I'm ever going to become, it can't exist somewhere outside of me.
No.
So it's already inside of me, and realizing that it's already inside of me, it's like, oh, I can do that. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people too, is that confidence or the belief that they can do it. And I think people forget this all the time. You can literally do anything. You just have to do it and put your mind to it and like put in the effort and realize the effort it's going to take. That's all it is. There's nothing that's insurmountable. It's so funny because every time I start something new, I always like when I look at it at first, I'm like, man, how do people do this? It's so overwhelming, the amount of information, the amount of stuff you need to know. But then once you start, you're like, oh, I totally see how they do it. It's like everything else. You build up little skills at first, foundational skills, and then those get to be more complex and they can be put together, and then you get better at it and more competent, and it's just it happens. It's like,
Hmm.
and it's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another motivation video that I listened to, and it was talking about, like, if you were in a coma, God forbid that happened, but you woke up from the coma and they said to you, you're a Navy SEAL. We need you to get back out there. We're waiting for you. Do you think you'd have a different mentality than if you woke up and someone was like your piano teacher? And it's like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
wow. And so I started incorporating that too into the way that I think about what I want. Like, I pretend that because when we're
Yeah. Oh,
children, if
yeah.
we're
Yeah.
brought into this world, we forget everything if we
Yeah.
are reborn. So like, I'm pretending that I forgot what I actually am, and that thing that I want, they actually want me back there. So I have to get back there. Like, that's what I am.
I like that's a good way to think of it. Like that it's like somebody woke you up and they're telling you what you are, where they need you, and you got to get out there. I like that. That's a good way to think. You kind of get your head straight in that perspective.
Well, it because it's like that thing that I want, I already am that. Like, I just
Yeah.
have to do what it, like, imagine if you were like Michael
Yeah.
Phelps or something, and he went to a coma, forgot how to swim. And people
Yeah.
are like, "You're Michael Phelps. You're the best swimmer that the universe has ever seen." Like, just
Go get it
just
done.
do the training again. Like, go
Yeah.
back, do it. You can do it. If anybody can do it, you can do it.
I like that. It's a good way to think. It's funny because when that was something you just reminded me. I was gonna say, like, I noticed when I get stuck, I just imagine like my brain shifting to that way of thinking. I know this sounds weird at first, but like I'll use the example because we already mentioned that we're doing the programming boot camp. Like I find that when I'm programming, I get stuck. I just imagine that my brain just needs to like process this, and that's different, and then it becomes clear. It's weird. It's like imagination can actually help us. I know this is not clear. I wish it was clear, but imagination, we can just like pretend that we are that thing and we can become it. It's so weird how it works, but I found it works so well for me. Like I do it with philosophy all the time. Like when it's like to read sometimes different philosophies, you have to like shift your thinking, and part of that is just imagining that you're thinking differently. It's not changing anything. It's already within you. It's just shifting your perspective or mentality a certain way. Does that make sense
Dude,
at all?
it totally makes
Yeah.
sense. Because when people have like a clear, defined idea of what they are and what they are not, it's like, how do you know that? We don't even understand how the brain works. Like,
No,
we can't replicate a brain.
we don't
And it's
know
just like,
anything. We don't even
yeah,
know it, like how lightning works, really. I think
yeah,
I still
or
can't explain it.
electricity.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
flips a switch, they know it's going to work, but really nobody knows how it actually works.
yeah, yeah,
And why does a black and white cow eat green grass, make yellow butter, white milk, and have red meat? Like, how does
yeah,
that work?
yeah. Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? It's like it doesn't make any. Yeah, and so when you think of it that way, it's like we have this ability to just also just pretend to. I think we forget how much imagination is important, and we lose that, and we think the world's fixed, but it's not. We don't know shit. We really don't know anything. So you can be anything because there's nothing stopping you.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, for me, I think it was Will Smith who said that, like, you have to believe it first.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that. And for some things that I've achieved in my life, long before they actually manifested to where everybody else
See
could
it?
see it, like,
Yeah.
I believed it myself. I was like, this is going to happen. Like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. And it took a lot of work. Like, I'm not saying law of attraction where you just sit back and
No,
imagine stuff,
no,
because that doesn't work. But
it's
it
stupid.
took a lot of work. But it also took seeing it for myself and believing myself. And then it just happened.
But I think that's you're hitting on like the most important thing, and that's that confidence that you can do it, that belief that it's going to work, that you can do it. And I think that way about everything. Every time I've attended school, I'm like, I know I can do this. It's not a big deal. Like I know I can, and like I know it'll happen. Just do the work. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that attitude, it's like the obstacles you encounter are just a part of the process. They're not a big stumbling block. They're not this mountain that you can't overcome. And even if you hit something that seems hard to overcome, you can do it already. So it's not like something that's insurmountable. You ask questions, you reach out for help, whatever. But you get through it because you've already convinced yourself that you've done it, that it's going to happen. And I think it's so important. But
Well,
I don't know. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's doing the work. And especially recently, like in America, I've noticed there's this big sense of entitlement where everybody thinks they're totally entitled to everything,
Yeah,
just doing
yeah,
coming their way without doing any work. And like I grew up, I started working very young, and work ethic
yeah.
was kind of like drilled into me. Like that's one thing that you've got to have. You got to be able to work and just like work harder than anybody else and work smarter than anybody else, and then you'll be able to get whatever you want. But
Mm.
like that literally is one of the biggest keys in getting anything you want. Like, how bad do you want it? Are you willing to put in the work necessary?
Well, I think that's the crucial question, right? Are you willing to do the things that you have to do to get it done? Whatever that means. If it means going to work an 8-hour day and coming home and spending 3 hours doing additional work, learning something new so that you can do the thing that you really want to do. Are you willing to do that? Or like, when people look at, I was thinking about this too, because this crossed my mind, people look at like people that are successful on YouTube or TikTok and they're like, oh, I wish I was, they just got lucky. And it's like, no, they probably put a lot of work in and they probably been doing it for years and they probably have been dedicating a ton of time to it on the side. And you're just not seeing it because you became aware of them when they already had 100,000 followers or 1 million followers. You didn't see when they had one or none. And like, and I think we miss that part because we become aware of it when they're already successful, when they've already done the thing, when they're already getting sponsorships. We don't see what happened and how long that road was before, or all the failures they had before. It could be their eighth channel, or their 15th channel, or the 20th rendition of TikTok account. Like you don't know how many times they've succeeded and failed. But I think that's the other side of it too. Like, do you want it badly enough to fail numerous times until you get it right? Because I think that's the other side of that is like, how bad do you want it? Success is just the time you don't fail. That's all it is, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. All you need is one home run. And that's
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing is but you got to keep going up to bat.
yeah,
However, there's another. Les Brown used to say, he used to do door-to-door sales, and he said it was like punishing because everybody would say no. But he when he changed his mindset to every no gets me closer to a yes, that helped propel him forward. And that's like, if you want success, that's what you got to go after, because you're like, yeah, no, a no can sting, but you get back up, you brush yourself off and be like, hey, guess what? That's one more behind me. Now I'm much closer to the win.
it's funny. It's like there's a reason why all these great philosophers and sages talk so much about imagination, attitude, and mindset, because they are really like the three key things. We have control over it, and they are our strongest ability. Like we can create whatever world we want. We can make the world look however we want. We can interpret it any way we want, but how we do it is critical to whether or not we succeed. And it's just creating an interpretation that I'm going to succeed, and you will succeed. It's giving yourself that power over yourself, basically. That's all it is. Because the only person you're fighting is yourself in this
Mm-hmm.
whole process. And it's
Yeah.
insane, but it's true. Like it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah. So how bad do you want it? I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
It's
That's
funny
that.
too. This is one thing I other wanted to mention too, because I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, you know, how bad do you want it to? Like, if you take, like, I was thinking of like people that go to school and like they get so worried that if they don't get an A, they're not doing well. But they just need to pass, right? To be able to get the thing. Like, so also like, are you willing to stick with it even if you're not the best? That's the other side of it too, because you can still get it and you can still get better later. It might click later. Like, how bad is it that you want it? And what is your level? What is your bar for success? What does success look like? Knowing these things is like kind of a crucial, I think, to actually be able to imagine it clearly and get it.
Yeah. It I think it's worthwhile to even just stop doing things that you don't really want.
Yeah.
Like
Oh God. Yeah.
we talked about being able to know the difference, but like actually stopping things that you don't want, because it frees you up to actually go after what you do want.
Yeah.
And like a lot of
Dude,
people, they go to jobs that they hate, and they'll do that for the majority of their life.
yeah.
Yeah. But also, another thing that I
Oh,
wanted to
actually, I
mention.
will say one of my the times I felt the best was when I walked away from the PhD program, and I was like at the end. I had finished all my coursework. I had passed all my exams. I was at the very end, and it was still made sense to me to just walk away. It was like smart because I didn't want to do it anymore.
Mm.
but it was a hard decision, it was, because it was like that's what I had been doing for a long time, like
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's really important to know what you want. Because then also when you know what you want, people can't force you to want
No.
what you don't want.
Yeah.
And like you don't it's like you don't really get marketed to that much anymore when you know what you want. Like you really
You
don't
can't be.
care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The marketing doesn't matter anymore. And that's what's funny
Hmm.
too. Dude, you look at all these, you see people all the time that are so influenced by all this shit. And it's like, it just doesn't matter. If you know what you want, none of this shit matters. They can't convince you. They can't change your desires. They can't change what you want. You'll either want it or you don't because it's something useful to you. It has nothing to do with what they're saying. Like, and I think
Hmm.
that is a freedom that most people do not know at all.
Hmm. Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to say about work ethic, like one thing that I find very inspirational for me personally in work ethic is some of the places I've traveled. Like in America, we have this big thing where we love to say we're number one in everything. We say we're the hardest working people,
Yeah, yeah,
have the
yeah.
best healthcare, the best education, and it's just bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's
I've
in the
traveled to
dream.
some countries. Yeah, I know, right? I've traveled to some countries where people work 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, and they make $10 a day.
Yeah.
Like they work so insane to be able to make so little money. And to think and so like every time that I come up against an obstacle where I have to put in work and it's just like, oh, come on. I think back to that and I'm like, these people are literally slaving away and I'm complaining about this little task right here. Let's man up and let's just get this done.
Yeah. No, and I think to your point too, it's like if you know what you want, you're also choosing what you get to do. And that is like probably one of the most affluent things in the world to be able to do is to choose the life that you want, to choose to even be in a position to be able to choose that you want to do type of work or a type of career or a type of achievement and then be able to go out and do it. That is like one because not everybody has that option. Most people don't. So if you're listening to this and you have that option, just keep that in mind that you are also probably in one of the freest positions you can be in. You just have to utilize that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that perspective helps a lot, dude. Thinking about
Totally.
that, holy crap. Yeah, it does.
Because I'm always like I can't complain at all. Like anytime that I think that I have hard, like I remember my first ever job, I was a dishwasher, and I still remember the first day of that job because I worked like 8 hours or so for the first time in my life, and I was standing the whole time, and I was so exhausted at the end of that shift, and still like I can't complain to what they have to go through because
No.
that was only eight
Yeah.
hours, and it
You got to
definitely
leave.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So like, yeah, it just reminds me every time. Helps with the perspective to just see
Yeah.
that do I really want this? You know?
I think that's right. And I think if you can ask yourself that too, like, do I really want this? And you can list the things you need to do. And those things are possibilities. They might involve sacrifice, they might be hard, but keep in mind that perspective that not everybody has that option and you get to. So do it. Take advantage of your life.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to know what you don't want.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
sometimes I get such a good feeling from when I figure out before I get involved in something that I really don't want this, and then just be like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
It's like look at all the time that I just freed up. Look at all the effort that I just freed up, the energy that I freed up to actually focus on what I want to do.
You have to know what you want though. I think that's it. And I think that's the crucial thing is like if you know what you want, you can start actually planning your life around it. And you can
Okay,
get
so
clear about what you don't want. Yeah. Yeah.
so tips for people who don't know what they want because I'm sure there are some people like that's so easy for you guys to say because you already know what you want. How do I don't even know what I want. How do I yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I don't know that it's like I don't think you have to be dead clear about like at first at least. You definitely don't have to know exactly what you want, but I think you have to start whittling down that list. So I think for me at least, making lists of what's important to me. So broadly speaking, like do I value friends? Do I value time with my friends? Do I value watching TV? What do I actually care about? What actually matters to me? What can I free up in my day? That's always a good starting place for me. is where can I find time in my day that I'm wasting that I can use doing something else.
Hmm. I think uh, when I get stuck and I'm looking for like what to do, I look at what could excite me and what
Yeah,
bores me. So
that's
like
a good one.
I like the what could excite me instead of what excites me, because usually when I'm feeling down or whatever, there's nothing that excites me.
No,
But
yeah,
what
nothing.
could excite me? Write that
Yeah,
down and then figure out how to start working towards that.
yeah,
And then what bores me and figure out how to stop doing that.
yeah, that's a good
Because
one. I like that.
what a lot of people are searching for is like excitement, because when you're excited, when you're having a great time, you're not thinking about
No,
how bad life is or anything really. You're just involved in whatever the situation is. But when you're bored, that's when you have the time to really think about it and be like, oh, my life, why? And so yeah, I think those are important.
with that too, I would say find out what excites you, but also know that everything you're going to do is going to have things that just have to get done. And
Mm,
being aware of that at the head of time. Because like I knew that like one thing I will say about like teaching, like I love teaching. I hate grading. And like, but I knew it was part and parcel, right? It goes together. So it's like, you get to do something you love this. So it's like knowing that distinction is really important. Because everything you do, you're gonna hit walls, or you're gonna hit the tedium of like things like I really
yeah.
love coding and I love technology, but sometimes it's also redundant and tedious because you're doing the same
Hmm.
thing over and over again. But I love the end result, so it makes it worthwhile.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was Mark Manson who said, what shit sandwich are you willing to eat?
Yeah, yeah,
And
basically.
and it sometimes it can be a deal breaker. Like for me, being a veterinarian, for a lot of people, that's their dream job. I am not happy eating the shit sandwich of having to kill animals. That's just not
Yeah,
cool with me. So
yeah,
like
yeah.
for me, it was a deal breaker completely. But it's helpful to realize beforehand what that
Yes, it
shit
is.
sandwich is you have to eat.
Before you do all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I think the other thing too is like once you know what you want, single-mindedly pursue it. Be willing to
Mm.
well, I would say be willing to sacrifice a lot in your life and know what you're willing to sacrifice because certain things you might not want to. And if that's the case, then you need to maybe get clear about what really matters to you, or maybe you need to shift a little bit so that you can get what you want. Because I think it is possible to get a life that is happy and good and that is good right for you, but you have to decide what those conditions are and what the metrics are that determine it.
Hmm. Yeah, they talk about that in Think and Grow Rich. Like know what you want and also know what you're willing to give up.
Yeah.
And that's because you're gonna have to give up a lot in order to get
What
somewhere.
and I think people forget that trade-off a lot. Like I've met so many people, like whether it was teaching or whether it's changing careers or whatever, like where like they're working 40 hours a week, but they're doing then in addition to that, like a full-time education program. Because yeah, the next 4 years of their life might suck, but they're not doing it for those 4 years. They're sacrificing that for the time after when they can start doing what they want, making better money. And it's like you have to be willing though to sacrifice those 4 years to really a hard grueling schedule sometimes in order to get what you want later. And it's like you have to be willing to make that trade off.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's about.
Yeah,
I think
right.
how bad do
Yeah.
you
So
want
yeah,
it? You got to want it real bad, or just let it
yeah,
go.
yeah. I think that's probably the best advice, right? If you don't
Hmm.
want it bad enough, just let it go.
Hmm.
And because otherwise, you're not going to ever commit enough to it. It's always going to be half done, and it'll just be a waste of time.
Yeah, and don't
Yeah.
feel guilty about it. Like
No.
I remember when I was younger, I wanted to be like a shredding guitarist.
Yeah.
And I would practice and I would take lessons and I would learn all these songs. But there was one day when I just realized, like, I really don't want it that bad. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
willing to do whatever it takes to be a
No.
shredding guitarist. So I'll just be like a hobbyist guitarist.
Yeah.
Okay, good enough for me. I'll pick up the axe when I want to. And when I don't, I don't. And great, I'm not a
That,
shredding guitarist, but my life is much better because I figured that out.
that's funny though, because it's like that's like you look at great musicians like Eric Clapton and stuff. Like I mean, dude, they just play their instrument all the time 24/7. I mean, like that's what they do. So it's like, yeah, if you're willing to do that, you're gonna get awesome at it. If you're not, probably not. Like,
Mhm.
but you can do it as a hobby. But that's the other thing. That's knowing what's fun too, what you like doing, but that you don't want to commit all your time to. I think there's a big distinction.
Mhm.
Yeah. So know what you want. How do you know? You guys should know now, right? Figure out what
Mhm.
it is, stick with it, and let go of things that you don't want. They're not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add? Write it down.
Write
Yes,
it down.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can't mention that enough.
And
All right.
do it until. That's it.
Yeah.
Write it down
Yeah.
and do it until. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the two best things, I think. Yeah. Anything else? You good?
That's all.
We're good. All right. We'll be back midweek with another quick fix. I hope you guys like the full-length episode. Check us out on YouTube. Listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe. Share with your friends. It helps us out a lot. And until then, though, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.